Hello everybody and welcome to another Crumbum Deluxe transmission. If you're hearing this, then you've clicked the right link on YouTube. And thank you for joining me. Or I've shared it to you and you possibly know me. But I'm here today to talk about Supergirl. I was lucky enough to be a Regal Unlimited member and go to a fan first screening is what they called it, which aired Wednesday night of this week. This video will probably be dropping around Friday at some point. But I was able to see it a little bit early. I did a 40X show. I was not into the 40X at all. If you don't know what 40X is, it's like the chairs are moving and air gusts are blowing and, you know, water is spritzing. For the first like 10 minutes of the movie, I thought somebody was kicking the back of my chair and it was like taking me out of the movie and it was horrible. I'm not a fan of the 40X, and if I can help it, I will not be doing that again. I did also see the film in 3D, which was pretty cool. It didn't really add, I don't think, anything extra to the film other than a slight bit of depth, which the film has kind of like a drab-ish color scheme. It's really kind of brown and gold. So, you know, I don't feel like it was really warranted to do a 3D thing. I'm very surprised 3D is still around. But other than that, I had a good time at the movies with Supergirl in general. I think it has some issues that it's suffering from, and, you know, some things that we hoped wouldn't be there as far as where the DC Studios is getting its footing in the industry here with all the corporate hullabaloo that's going on between Warner Brothers and Paramount and all these, you know, corporations that own literally everything are having tussles. So that's affecting the level of this entertainment, I think. And with James Gunn at the helm of DC Studios, we know it's in good hands, but we're also a little skeptical at this point and questioning whether or not the talent he has or the pool that he's pulling from is right for some of these projects. So Supergirl was, in general, really fun. It's a good movie, great performances by all the actors. I love the dynamic between Millie Alcock's Supergirl and the young girl, I forgot her name, but she plays Ruthie. They're really great. She's awesome. I love her gumption. It's very much like a True Grit type of story where Ruthie is trying to find somebody to help her hunt down the people that killed her parents for revenge, and Millie Alcock's Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, gets entangled in her tale by trying to also save her dog that was poisoned by the bad guy in the film. The villain of this film, Krim, he's not very interesting. He's not very impressive. They do what they can. They make every attempt to make him menacing, but he just looks like a Mad Max reject to me, and he wasn't quite as imposing as maybe a good villain should be in a film that you'd like to see a good throwdown at the end. All the action in the film is great. They do a good job of just, you know, making sure that it's quality and that it's visually interesting to watch. Now, I've not read the comic Woman of Tomorrow that this movie is largely based on, but I hear that in terms of visuals and from what I've seen online, the artwork from that comic is much different than what we see on screen. So I kind of wish we did get more of that color scheme and stylistic imagery that was in the comic in this film. However, that didn't work against the film for me. What we got was still quite strong. Kara Zor-El is an important character in the DC universe, so I'm glad they got a strong actress to play her. They make a joke about why isn't she Superwoman in the film, and honestly, she's Supergirl by name, but really the woman that she is, this actress, the performance that she portrays is quite apparent, and you see a really strong lead in her character, and she carries the film well. They all do. I think the two main leads, and then you have Jason Momoa's Lobo, who comes in, and he was a lot of fun. At times, I think his performance was a little corny, but it wasn't verging on cringe quite as much. I think he still has some work on dialing in how he's going to portray that character, and hopefully they feature him in some good storylines that are appropriate for that performance and that character. But in the movie, he's just getting started, and it's cool to see him have a blast. It's cool to see him play a character that's more in tune with kind of our general perception of how he might be in public or in personal life, kind of this wild man, full of attitude, carefree character. So Lobo was a lot of fun, and they added him in this story. I think he's not in the comic book story, so he was added in this film, and they do a good job of using him well in action sequences and just generally introducing him to this universe. So I think at this juncture we're off to a pretty good start with this DC Studio stuff, and I had a good time with this film. You know, the script, the story in of itself felt like it could have been a lot stronger, especially by comparison to how much of an experience Woman of Tomorrow as a graphic novel has been for many fans, as far as I have seen online. So it's a little bit of a letdown that, in contrast, this film is visually a little bit darker, but I think it services the character of Kara Zor-El well and where her emotional state is. So, you know, hopefully we'll be seeing her in Man of Tomorrow, the sequel to Superman, and interactions between her and Clark. And by the way, you know, Superman in this film has a couple cameos. That'll be the only spoiler. Sorry. But he is great. I love David Cornsweet's Clark Kent, Superman. He's doing a great job of being like the tentpole pillar figure of the DCU thus far. It's cool to get our footing with a good pantheon of characters thus far. You know, your Guy Gardner and your Mr. Terrific, Hawk Girl from the Superman film, and now Kara in this film, and Lobo. We're just getting started with the DCU, so I hope, you know, outside of any corporate bullshit, that James Gunn and company and the talent pool he's pulling from can really do justice to these characters, to this universe that they deserve, and can be in healthy rivalry with the MCU in order to honestly benefit both companies in making the best possible films they can. Right now, I think we're in a strange time. You know, Hollywood is not doing so well, as it seems, and superhero movies, it seems like people are getting somewhat tired of them here and there. But I think if the quality of your story and your filmmaking is there, people will show up to whatever it is. And I don't think it's so much a fatigue of superheroes as it is a fatigue of mediocre storytelling. And, you know, I think the director on this film, Craig Gillespie, shows up and does his job, but I think anybody else with a stronger voice could have made a much better Supergirl film. Although I think this one is not bad. It was a lot of fun. There's about half and half in terms of the humor. Some of the humor hits nicely. Other things, some of Lobo's moments don't hit quite the way they should. The villain's lame, but he's really there to help drive the plot forward. And, you know, we are connected emotionally to the main characters in a pretty palpable way, I think. One thing for me that I really loved in this film in particular was David Krumholtz as Zor-El, Kara's father, Supergirl's dad. He was really great speaking his Kryptonian and selling those emotional scenes. And I also loved that, you know, in Superman, Jor-El, Clark's father, had sent him to be a conqueror of Earth, and Clark, because he became humanized by being on Earth, had a different value set and decided to protect humans and be one of us. And with this was great because Zor-El, Kara's father, he already had this kind of moral notion that you should stand up for the weak, and he knew the way Superman got his powers is because the yellow sun of our solar system gives him his power. So Zor-El knew Kara would also be very powerful because he was sending her to Earth from a fragment of Krypton called Argo that they were able to put a shield around and survive off of for a while. So that explains some of the time difference between Kara knowing her Kryptonian roots and Clark not really knowing his Kryptonian roots. So she's important because she's the bridge that Superman, the tentpole of DC universe, she's the bridge to his culture and his world before. So it'd be interesting to see how they examine that, because that stuff always comes up in the DC universe, you know, how it reflects back to Krypton dying and what we're facing in the present time as far as Superman's concerned, because there's, you know, as you might not know, plenty to learn even after a planet is destroyed. So This film, I will say, as far as summer blockbusters go, is pretty good. I think a lot of people will really enjoy it if they give it a chance. I don't think it's tracking very well at the box office, and I think some of the corporate stuff that's going on with DC and Warner Brothers right now is probably affecting some of the quality of these works. But we'll see with Clayface coming out and, you know, some of the other projects that are announced under this banner. Man of Tomorrow we're looking forward to, and hopefully Kara turns up in that as well. But, you know, I will go ahead and say out of 5 crumbs, because I enjoyed it so much and I'm now a newly minted DC guy. I'm getting into it. I love these characters. I love this universe. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 3.5 stars, which I think for most people, it's going to kind of hit on an average kind of level. For many people, it might not be any better than Mandalorian and Grogu or Masters of the Universe, however you felt about those, or Disclosure Day for that matter. I think we're having a pretty good summer blockbuster season. Thus far, there hasn't been anything I really hated or anything. There's been some good horror. I'm trying to get on my other horror videos too, but, you know, I'm working and I'm also lazy. But, but, you know, the future looks uncertain for superhero movies, possibly, but I also think with some of the people working now, and potentially these two companies need each other, I think creating that healthy rivalry is going to make these films infinitely better across the board, and we can get back to a place where we're not only satisfying audience expectations but going way beyond them, and doing things that I think are daring and stylistic, that are going to give these films the, you know, credibility that they deserve, or these characters and these universes. You know, the superheroes are important to a lot of us, whether it's your thing or not. These are like our modern myths, and there are the ciphers by which we can face insurmountable and impossible situations and odds in their respective fictional worlds. But I think in some metaphorical or allegorical, I don't even know, I mix up the two kind of way, that can reflect in on your life. And I think we look to characters that can achieve the impossible to motivate and inspire us and capture our imagination, you know, however that's gonna be, because it's not so much just about comic book movies or superhero movies, which people may be tired of, but it's about thinking back of the medium of comics and the culture that it spawned, that there's no other medium like it for storytelling. There's many other mediums for storytelling, but there's a certain kind of magic going from panel to panel with you know, it doesn't even have to be superheroes, but you know, dismissing superhero films in an age where we're teetering on the fence in terms of quality is valid. But I also think that if you hang in there and you have some faith in some of the creators that are working on these films and where things can go, as well as supporting a healthy rivalry, then I think we can get, you know, comic book and superhero films that are worthy of the mythos that some of these characters and worlds possess. You know, the comics will always be there, and by all means, I highly recommend you read comics and graphic novels to your heart's content. But also film is important, and we really have, you know, maybe we just came out of a renaissance of it, but we really have had this moment in time where we were able to see these characters brought into real life. And, you know, I think most people who are fans of genre cinema, you know, sci-fi, horror, action, whatever, are fans of MCU and even the DC universe prior to the new heads that have taken over. You know, Zack Snyder's universe had some quality stuff going on there. I'm not the biggest fan, but I think it wasn't without trying and some really good ideas here and there. So, you know, in my mind, I just want to see DC prosper. I want to see Marvel prosper. I don't want to see stupid corporate decisions affecting this type of media, because it'll become forgotten. It'll become a relic of the ages if you know, these fandoms aren't supported by the audience, but also, you know, built with artistry and passion by those who hold the licenses and the, the properties themselves. And I'm a huge advocate of, you know what, go out and make your own movies, go out and make your own comics, draw, write, sing a song, do whatever you have to do that's original, that these corporations don't have their grubby little meat claws in. But as it stands, in terms of like a lot of modern entertainment that we really love and appreciate, Star Wars, Predator, Alien, what else you got, X-Files, you know, whatever it is, it deserves, because we've loved it so much and it's done so much for us, it deserves that support, you know. So I don't know, I'm just kind of ranting now, but I do love, obviously, comic book films and superhero films, and I think these characters are important. So without repeating myself or going over the same thing again, I'll leave it at that. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy Supergirl or any movie you see at the movies this weekend. Go ahead and leave comments or whatever in there. Let me know what you're watching and we can chat about it. Let me know what I should watch if you want me to chat about anything in particular. And I got more horror stuff coming, and I love you. Goodbye.